Hello, welcome to the Crafty View. I'm Diane Williams and I'm your host for today's show. I'm really excited to introduce you to this next craftsman. His name is Herbert Johnston and he works with woods. Welcome to the show, Herbert.
Thank you.
Well, I know that the screen says your name is Tamika, but that's not true. You're over there at the Craftsmen's Guild right now. But I wanted to make sure people know that you are Herbert. And where are you from?
I am an Air Force brat, so most of the United States, but my dad was from Yazoo County, Mississippi.
So you've been all over the world, probably.
Pretty much a lot of traveling. I've lived in 38 different places.
Tell us what type of art or craft do you indulge in?
When I was an Air Force brat, at that time, Air Force bases had hobby shops. They had ceramic, automotive, woodworking. And my dad and I used to go to the woodworking shop on weekends and make a coffee table for my grandmother, make a gun cabinet for one of my uncles. So I've been playing with wood since I was 6 or 7 years old. And the last 15 years as a member of the Craftsmen's Guild, I have picked pretty much full-time hobby.
So this has been a hobby of yours for many years.
Yes, for a long time.
What's your favorite thing to create?
Something that I have not done before. Always looking to push the envelope a little bit further just to see if I can do it.
I love to hear craftsmen and artists say that because we have to look at pushing the boundaries on what we know, and you never know what you might discover when you do something like that. Well, just show us
Right.
one piece of your art so we can wet our palates a little bit.
One of my hobbies is to go around the country looking for pieces of wood, which most people may be familiar with the tree, but they've never seen the wood before, and looking for a unique item. This is a mimosa. And the reason it has that feather pattern in the middle is because it's known as a crotchwood, where there's two forks of a tree go up like this, one way and one the other. Mimosa trees that most people see don't generally get nearly this large. They're usually 10 to 12 inches in diameter, but this one was an exceptional tree.
That is beautiful. I can't imagine what's that process like? Help us to understand what you do.
Diana, usually what we do is once I find a unique piece of wood like this, I'll take a chainsaw, harvest that piece of wood and take it back to my shop. It gets painted with a wax material. It sits up for generally a year. And that time period, it will dry and hopefully it won't crack. If you try to make something out of it as soon as you harvest it, odds are really, really good that it will break. But if it dries for a year, then you can shape a bowl like this and it's stable, it won't crack.
So you said it has to dry. Does that mean that sometimes there's sap or some?
When you cut a tree down, it's about 80% water, only about 20% wood. You need to get it down to the point where it's about 14% water. So that takes a long time to happen. If you dry it out too fast, it'll warp and crack. So it needs to dry out real slow over a long period of time. Some things that I harvest, we will actually put it up for many years. A burl off of a tree is something that some people have seen. It actually looks like a wart that grows on the side of a tree. This is a cherry tree. And the wood structure and the grain just goes all over the place. It has no straight grain to it. This sat in my shop for 5 years before I finally got enough nerve to make 2 pieces out of that one burl.
It's beautiful.
These are a lot more rare than any other kind of wood.
So
and then while we're waiting on those to dry, then we turn around, we make a lot of small items. This is a deer call, or duck call made out of deer antler, or a corkscrew made out of antler, a fan pole. I always hate when you go to Walmart and you buy a ceiling fan and it has 2 little white plastic pulls and you go, which one's the light, which one's the fan? So if you make one of these, it looks like a light, you put that on the light so everybody will know which one to pull. You make a deer call out of cherry wood. This also allows us to use up a lot of the small pieces of wood that come leftovers from projects like this. You have lots of small pieces of wood to consume. This is a wine stopper made out of that same mimosa wood. Then there are woods that are like this, which is just one solid chunk of the tree. Or you can take and do what's called a segmented bowl, like this. This is little pieces of wood that are spalted maple with a walnut base and a walnut rim. Now this wood, you don't have to set this thing up for a year to dry because this wood is already dry before you start making the bowl. And when you really get ready to get complicated, we'll make a bowl that looks like this. There's 9 different types of wood, 2 different types of veneer, and 1,192 pieces of wood.
it's amazing. You've got to tell us what happens after the wood dries. But first, let me ask you this. So you have a studio at your home, is that correct?
Yes.
And is there a section where there's
Yes, we do.
wood drying?
It's I didn't understand your question.
Do you have a section where there's all types of wood drying in one section of your studio?
Yeah, we have 5 different buildings out in the country. It's an old farm, and I use the old chicken house. It right now has about 400 bowls in it drying. Probably half of those are already dry, and I just haven't gotten around to turning them. And there's some of every kind of wood you can imagine. So if somebody called me and said, Herb, I need a bowl 15 inches in diameter made out of cedar, I say, sure, I'll have you one ready next week. So we have a large collection of pieces in process. Then we have a lot of people who have little small sawmills, and they're portable, and they can come to your place and saw up your lumber, saw up your trees. So I have another building that has about 10,000 board feet of dried lumber to make the small segmented pieces out of. One of the members of our guild said, Herbert, you're likely not to consume all of this wood in your lifetime. So I thought about it, I said, well, I don't know about that. And then I started thinking, well, you know, my grandchildren already have all of their beds and furniture that they want me to make them. And so he might be right. So I started these projects like this just so that I could consume a lot of wood. And I still don't think it's going to work. My kids are going to inherit a big building full of wood.
Do you also make ink pens? I've seen those ink pens made out of wood that wood turners create.
I make ink pens and letter openers, make an egg. This is the leftover scraps from this bowl.
So for those of us who have never seen wood turning, well, I've seen people do that at the John C. Campbell Folk Art School, but a lot of people have never seen it done. After the wood dries and you determine what it is that you want to make, what is your process and what kind of machinery do you use?
I have a large wood workshop. It's 1,500 square feet. And when they shut down all of the VOTEC centers at the high schools, they auctioned a lot of that equipment. So I went in and bought an entire shop full of equipment back from the 40s and 50s and restored it all. And now most of that is better than what you can buy on the market today. So we have planers and joiners and saws and edgers, and I have 6 wood lathes. I teach wood turning in my shop, and I limit the number of the class sizes to 6 because I want everybody to have hands-on doing on their own individual wood lathe. But when I get ready to start on the bowl, I generally take a big chunk of wood, set it up on the counter, and just leave it there for a few days in my way. So I have to step around it, and I'll be looking at it and thinking about what I can make out of that piece of wood. And then once I make a decision, then I'll go from there. But some people tell me, they say, well, how did you come up with that? And I tell them, well, you should see how many of them wind up in the trash can, because they don't all work. We make ink pens like you were talking about made out of wood. Well, I make ink pens made out of coffee grounds, made out of white surgical gauze for the nurses, made out of pine straw for the landowners and the farmers. But any material that you can bind together with a 2-component epoxy and cut, you can make anything that you would make out of wood.
It's amazing. Does it take hours and hours? For instance, one of those big bowls you showed me?
This piece right here took a little over 100 hours. This is made by stacking rings like this, and there's 28 rings stacked up. They're 1/4 inch thick each, and then gluing those together. Once all the rings are glued up, then stack them up and gluing them up, and then turning it and finishing the bowl. So yeah, so many pieces can be done in 2 or 3 hours. A piece like this, we rough it out as a blank, put it up and let it dry, and it may take 20 minutes with a chainsaw to get it somewhat into the shape of a bowl, and then rough it out, seal it, put it up. You maybe have another hour or 2, but then next year when you get ready to put this on the lathe, take you an hour to cut it out to final, another hour to finish sanding it, and a couple more hours to get polyurethane finished on it. So a piece like this, total involved time, 10 to 15 hours.
It's beautiful, just beautiful. I noticed on the duck call, the pieces of wood that you've created, the duck call, 1 or 2 of the things you showed me that were small have some etchings on them. Tell me about that.
Like this piece here? this is actually the raw surface of an antler. Deer's antler is just like a human bone. It's porous in the middle. So in order to make anything out of it, you have to solidify it by taking cyanoacrylate resin and drilling the hole that you need for the size, and then saturating this whole thing with resin so it becomes a very durable, hard material. And then you cut the two pieces for a duck call. This is a purchased plastic reed, which actually makes the sound, and the two pieces go together. I sell a lot of these to duck hunters, and I have to warn them. I say, don't drop it in the water because it won't float. Yeah, they're used to plastic duck calls that'll float if they drop them. If they drop an antler duck call, they might not get it back.
In working with those duck calls, was it trial and error? I know you have the reed in there that makes the sound, but did the wood change that sound?
Most of these people have been making calls for thousands of years. The first wood lathe to make something like this took two people, one person with his foot on the rope pumping. And the first ones, the oldest ones we know about are depictions from two guys in Ethiopia, 2000 BC, making wooden bowls and making sticks, handles. And so I tell people, I say, look, there's no such thing as having an original shape. I mean, men have been making pottery, by hand for thousands of years. You can't make a vessel that hasn't been made before. You can make a design. You can put a stencil and carvings that are unique, but an egg's an egg. I don't care who makes it, it's still an egg.
Is there a distinguishing mark on your designs that I could identify your work if I came over to the Craftsman's Guild?
No, I mean, I sign my name on the bottom of each piece, and I have a little story to tell you. I was finishing a piece and then signing my name on the bottom, and then I look at a piece and my name's not there. And it took me a while to figure out what was happening. Ladies were putting hand cream on their hands at the shows, and then they would pick up a piece, and that hand lotion will dissolve the ink from your name on the bottom of a bowl. So since I've realized that, now I sign my name on the wood, then put a coat over that. So it's there pretty much permanent.
Well, you learned that through trial and error, I'm sure.
That's true, right.
Are you a fellow member in the guild?
I am. I've been with the guild about 15 years now. And I try my best to never make the same thing twice. Somebody wants me to replicate something. Now, I mean, it was fun making it the first time. It's not fun making it the second time. Some people want me to make finials for their fences and make 50 finials. I said, no, that's more like work. I'm retired. This is a hobby. It's supposed to be fun. So you have to make it fun.
Well, you worked alongside your dad, which I think is just phenomenal. But what do you think of mentoring others?
I have mentored a lot of people, several people in the guild. And my favorite story is a young boy who was 15 years old, who was mentally challenged, and he wanted to make duck calls. And I just thought about what's my liability teaching a mentally deficient young man. And then it just dawned on me. I said, well, if we can get your mom to take the class with you. And they agreed, and he learned to make duck calls. He's 22 or 23 years old now. He sells about 200 a year. He is extremely good at making duck calls. And I'm proud to have mentored him into doing that.
What a beautiful story. Oh my goodness, that's incredible. What about women in your field of work?
Well, see, mostly what I'm making are larger and larger and larger. I like to challenge myself, how big can I make this? I have pieces that are 58-inch tall vases with thousands of pieces of wood. I have pieces that are this big around, and I can actually stick my head in them while they're spinning on the lathe, if you're brave enough. But all of this type of stuff like this is made on a little bitty lathe that's called a mini lathe, and it's about the size of a sewing machine. And I tell the women, I said, look, most women are better at making this than guys are, because most women have little petite hands and they were made not like mine. One of my best students works at St. Catherine's Federal Wildlife Refuge down south of Natchez, Mississippi. Now she is an excellent wood turner. You know, she's bought her own lathe and her own shop, the whole works.
Do you ever go to workshops or to learn more about what you do from other masters?
We have in central Mississippi, we have a wood turning club. I think there's about 100 members. And we travel back and forth to everybody's shop to see what they bought, what they're doing, and we share trees, because no wood turner wants to turn 50 pieces of this tree. You know, so if a tree comes down, I'll take 4 or 5 and give everybody else 4 or 5. And I always say, if you go to a festival and you see a whole lot of wood turners with the same kind of wood, whichever wood turner has the most, he had the tree.
Do you ever have first of all, when you say lathe, you're saying Lathe?
Correct.
Okay, I wanted to make sure people knew that. When you're using the lathe, sometimes do you have shavings on the floor from carving and
When
wood?
I'm in full production in my shop, I produce about 200 gallons a day, about 4 55-gallon drums full of wood shavings. I used to sell them for $1 a black for the big black yard bags, and ladies come pick them up to dress all of their gardens. But now I have a You Pick It berry farm. We have 350 blueberry bushes and 2,000 feet of muscadines. And so now I use all of my own settings on all of my own gardens.
So you're out there making wine as well?
Oh, yes. In Mississippi, you can only make what you can consume yourself. You can't sell it.
That's beautiful. What does your family think of what you do, and do they also work with you sometimes?
My next younger brother just retired last year as vice president of Farm Bureau. He has a shop in LA, and he likes to play when he can. And since he's just retired, he's not had as much time to do that as I have. And my youngest brother, he had some stints, and since then he has pretty much quit. But he used to do all of the finishing on my pieces. I would work on the lace during the day, and then I would quit, and he would come put finish on them for me in the evenings.
Do you ever do shows such as Chimneyville, which is the Craftsmen's Guild's annual show, usually downtown at the Trademark and now at the Guild? Have you ever done regional shows?
I've done shows from as far west as Lafayette, Louisiana, and as far east as Pensacola, Florida, as far north as Memphis. So in that triangle, I have probably done about 50 different shows. Some years we do 4 or 5, some years we do 20 or 30. Just depends on how I feel.
What is it? Oh, I'm sorry. What is it like transporting all that wood? Do you have a method?
They actually transport very well. A lot of these secondhand stores sell t-shirts very, very cheap. You can buy 20 of them for $1, you know, in a bag. And all of these wooden vessels stick in a t-shirt real well and then pack them in 33-gallon plastic totes. And so you can put 20 or 30 pieces in one tote. Makes it really easy and convenient to haul them. And we travel to shows with a tent and probably 6 to 8 of those totes full of material to sell. And we sell these pieces. They go to Ethiopia, they go to Korea and Japan, and go to the Kremlin. They go to Cuba. And one of my pieces went to Cuba, and I was asked if I had a problem with that. And I told him, I said, no, my dad was in the Air Force in the 60s. So long as he doesn't ever find out, we're good. He might not like the idea that Castro got a hammer ink pen.
So do you have a website where people could see your work?
I don't. I did for many years, and we did it just purely as a publicity viewing. It gets to be extremely problematic to sell wood turning over a website, because every piece that you make is unique. You take a picture of it, you sell it, you got to either mark it as sold, take it back off. It's not like you were making 20 earrings or 20 bracelets all identical and you could just pick one. So we closed it down.
So most people could come to the Craftsmen's Guild at 950 Rice Road in Ridgeland to see your work. Is that correct?
Sure, or my shop.
And your shop is in what town?
1001 Johnston Road, Benton, Mississippi.
And how can people get in touch with you? Is there a phone number? Or
Yes, my cell phone, which is, much as I hate to admit it, I don't have a smartphone. I have a flip phone. Number is 769-798-4835.
Wonderful.
My shop is open to the public 24/7, and people come from all over just to visit the shop. We had the governors and senators and CEOs, and we had the farmers and the pulpwood cutters. Everybody comes to visit the shop.
That is awesome.
We give demos to show people how things are made. But one of the things I like to do is I teach a class as an introductory class to wood turning, because I had some friends years ago who got close to retirement age and went out and bought upscale wood lathe. And you're generally talking anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. And those same people 2 months later decide that that's not what they want to do. So what you do, if you take my class, by the end of the day, you're going to know whether or not you want to take up wood turning as a hobby or not. You're going to be brain dead, because I'll to give you about 1,000 facts. But plus, I've been doing this a long time, and I know all the ins and outs of where you can find all the supplies all around the world. I get wood from a little boy in Australia. I get desert ironwood from a guy in Arizona, things of that nature.
Have you ever used eucalyptus wood, which is rare? It doesn't.
My wife is allergic to eucalyptus, so I can't even have it in my shop.
That's a beautiful, strong wood too.
Yes.
What's your favorite wood?
Cherry. Cherry is the most user-friendly wood. It machines well, it cuts well, it sands well, it finishes well. There may be other woods that will do one or two things better, but as just overall, cherry is easy to work with and it's pretty.
Well, Herbert Johnston, you have been a great interview today. I want to thank you. And could you just say your phone number one more time for our audience?
769-798-4835.
Thank you so very much.
And if you have a question on chemistry, you can call me and I'll answer it.
Chemistry?
I have a doctorate in chemistry.
Oh.
And I play with wood.
And you play with wood. Thank you for sharing that information.